Alright, so I'm gonna go over my deck profile. Now, I'm not recording on a PC or anything, as you can tell. I'm on a PlayStation, so just gotta do this all live. Just gotta take it for what it is. And I'll just try to go through this as quickly as possible. So, as you can see here, I have a couple of different decks, mainly centered around Unity. On here, my main profile, which I've gotten to Platinum in both seasons. It only took me like a couple of days in the second season to get back to the Platinum. Frustratingly, but I got there. So I have two different versions of my Dragunity deck. The first one that I was using, we'll go over it. I was over this, the two Dragunities and then the Dragunity made one. So I used this mainly to climb through maybe gold 5 to gold 3, maybe gold 2. But then I kept coming across Trap Tricks, Outlich, Sky Striker, and this deck is more centered around beating combo decks with the Maxi and Nibiru, and a little bit more you have Waking the Dragon, two of these, and Ice Dragon's Prism, which will actually, these trap cards can win you a game by themselves when you drop the Ultimate Falcon on people, or you take away two of their key combo pieces away from them. So it can pretty much win you a game. I just added in Triple Tactics talent this morning, actually. So this wasn't in the deck profile previously, but it's a good card to have. And neither did I have Tempest in here originally, which is why this is at 42 instead of 40. I added in these two cards without really adjusting the numbers. The main purpose of this was a more flexible version. So if you're going first or second, for the most part, you don't really mind seeing some of these cards. But what happened with me, I would have Maxi and Nibiru in hand, and I'm going against Outlich. They played 5 cards face down, ended their turn, and I didn't draw into Harpies or the one Lightning Storm that I have. So it didn't exactly work out all that well. And for some of the cards, if you're looking at this Dragunity Whirlwind or 3 of these Divine Lances, the Divine Lance is actually pretty good against the Outlich matchup since your dragons are unaffected by trap effects. So all their Conquistadors and stuff, they can't destroy your dragon if it's equipped with this. And it also helps extend your combo. If you brick, which is my main issue, I brick hard. So I tried to make my deck where if I do brick, I can at least prevent my opponent from playing the game. Obviously, any Dragunity deck, you want to see your Remus. I got my nice shiny one here. Or you want to see your Dragon Ravine. One of the two to get your combo started. Preferably what you want in your hand is your Gamma along with Remus. This is pretty much if you have both these cards in your opening hand going first, unless they have infinite permanents, you're very likely to make your full board plus extra, because you can go into Stardust Dragon for that destruction protection. Because if you go against a deck that's running both Regeki and Lightning Storm, your one Borolo Dragon and Crystal Wing isn't about to save you. So having that is also pretty helpful. And since most people will use their Maxi on you trying to special summon your Legimus, you can still activate your Gamma to get over that. Or if they try ashing your Remus or your Dragon Ravine, you still don't have a monster on the board, so Gamma is pretty much active until you at least get him on the board. And at that point, you can just start to discard it with Ravine, because you're not likely going to get a whole lot of value out of it. I think Whirlwind is a pretty underrated card. I don't see a lot of other Dragunity decks playing it, and in a best of 3 format, I would agree with them, but in a best of 1 format, where you can't even control whether you're going first or second, this is a pretty important card. If you're going second, this is a card that you want to see in your hand, because most people are going to end with at least 1 monster on board, and if you actually can resolve this can pull out a couple of your Dragunity tuners, immediately get them in the graveyard, and you can either dump your ducks, send one of the wing beasts into the graveyard, get the combo started without having to use any of your special summons. Meaning that if your opponent, ashes you or something like that, you can continue to make your play through it because you still have 5 cards in your hand, because you essentially got 2 of your cards out with just this one spell. So I love to see this going second. You definitely want to see that. Of course, you want to have your Call by the Grave, pretty standard stuff. And the rest of the cards is just to facilitate the play. Most of the Dragunity cards are trash. As funny as that is, I love the deck, but yeah, most of the deck is trash. Your best cards are Remus and him. Like, if you see these two, they pretty much can get, by themselves, they can get you a pretty strong board, which I'll touch on when I go over the Dragon Maids. You don't actually need literally anything else. You don't need this tuner, you don't need that tuner, you don't need ducks, you don't need Syndicate, you don't need none of that. You know, they're kind of nice to have. You do need Mistleton minimum. You do need him, but that's it. The rest of it is the extra decks to kind of make your plays go. Now, the one that I started using later on, I call, of course, Turbo Dragunity. As you can immediately see with this, I have no max C. I have a little bit more tuner, a couple more of these monsters. Obviously, you can see here the 3 Lightning Storms, the 2 Call by the Graves, 2 Dark Ruler No Mores, and you could probably get a feeling of what I was going through in the ladder. Forcibly going second, going against Drytrons, Sky Striker, Eldritch, Trap Tricks, and I want to see my Lightning Storm. I want to see my Harpy Studded Duster, my Regeki or Dark Ruler, because I think I counted in one of my runs, I went second 8 games in a row. So I basically just decided, screw it, I'm going to make a deck going second, and I instead made this deck to better facilitate going second with cards that's going to work with that. So no Maxi, no Nibiru, even though those would be great cards to have going second, half the time I had them in hand, I'm going against really slow control decks, or if I am going against the combo deck, they just ended their turn. And I found that if I had either my Gamma or my Ash, which you should probably run 3 Ashes, I'm just stupid. If you're running more of these, you can stop pretty much all your opponent's plays with just these cards alone, and get a little bit more value out of it in comparison to running Max C, where they might just normal summon pass, and you don't even get to destroy their card out of it. But essentially this deck is the same as the other, except there's a couple more main deck monsters, and that's just so, like, if I draw 2 of these guys, I can still make a pretty strong board, even with just 2 of these in hand, which will happen a lot. A lot of my hands, I won't draw my Remus, I won't draw my Dragon Ravine, but I still have to make my entire play. So I added an extra one of him. Some decks were getting pretty smart in what they were banishing out of my graveyard, so I needed to have a second Koos, because he's pretty important to go into Barsha. He's very crucial if you're trying to get Barsha on the board. But other than that, it's basically about the same as the other deck. It's just, now if I'm going second, I have 2 Call by the Graves to catch their Ash or their Max C. Preferably, I still prefer to have Gamma in my hand. I like just having that extra tuner on board. So if I do have a more brickier hand, as long as I can get to Romulus, I can just use the Gamma and the Driver to go into Morload Savage Dragon instead, and then make whatever other board I can that way. In terms of the extra deck, I mean, it's weird how hard it is to really make room for other stuff in your extra deck. I'll probably do a second Heraldic Seal over a second Romulus, but I've came across a couple of decks that would Infinite Impermanence the Romulus, but they would brick, so they had no other plays. But unfortunately for me, I would only have 1 Romulus, meaning that I can't get to my my Dragunity Glow to make my combos go. In terms of some tech options, you could run, because the person that I drew inspiration from, his deck was built a lot different, but I also felt like his deck was brickier, but it was made for a best of 3 format, so it makes sense. But you could add in this trap card. This is actually really strong, and in one of my testing decks, I had this And it can be pretty helpful, but you want to run 3 glows in that case, because you want to have your glow in hand, draw into it, so when you get to your Romulus, you search out the trap card instead, which is just an Omni Negate. Well, it's a spell or trap card negate while you have a Dragunity Synchro on the board, and you should, at a minimum, have your have this one out. So with him out on board, you get a monster negate through his effect, and you have a spell or trap card negate that will also boost his attack power as well. So you have that option. But the reason why I'm not running it, 1, brick, and 2, not a lot of decks run Dark Ruler no more. Like, I feel like I'm one of the few decks who do, so typically when I make my board, my opponent is playing through it. There are a few occasions where there's a couple of like Kaiju players, but typically if I'm making my board, the opponent has to play through it, and they if I get a pretty decent hand, most of the time I will end on Erratic Seal, Borload, Crystal Wing, and Arid Stat, whatever. I will typically end on these 3, so 2 Monster Negates, an Omni Negate, and a Bounce. So if their deck can't really get past that, they're going to be in a pretty difficult swing. And that's of course if I don't end up using like my Gamma or something. If I use my Gamma, I can get those monsters out plus Stardust Dragon just to help prevent, you know, a free Regeki or something. It actually came clutch for me in one of my matches, summoning Stardust over Crystal Wing, which, if you know what type of deck that you're going against, it may be better to go into Stardust over Crystal Wing, because Crystal Wing can't protect you from Regeki, but Stardust can. Because if they run, you know, Regeki, that they Lightning Storm you and then Regeki you, the only thing you can really do is just use Erratic Seal, bounce your Borlo Savage Dragon so you can try to make him again later, so he's not in your graveyard, and then just summon out, you know, your level 10 in defense mode, and just hope for the best, because you're essentially broken at that point. But most decks don't play that. They usually just play a whole lot of monsters, and this is better facilitated to playing through that. And then finally, the super fun Dragunity Mate deck. Now, I actually don't play it on this profile, but I still made it on here just because I wanted to. There's a lot more going on here. I have the actual deck list that I use in my other profile, which just hit plat using the Dragunity Mates. And this version on here is a little bit more geared towards the Dragunity part. So there's only like 1 Dragon Maid of each, meaning that if they pretty much get banished, that's it for the Dragon Maid part. But you know, I have a choice at this point. The Dragoon ending on the Dragon Maids, instead of having 2 Monster Negates, an Omni Negate, and a Bounce, I instead trade to have 1 Bounce and 2 Omni Negates, because I have to use my normal summon to get into Shield, unless I have like a really cracked out hand, which doesn't ever happen for me. So I can basically make that type of board, because what you want to do is have your Dragon Maid in the graveyard, your Chamber in the graveyard, and your Nurse in hand. You normal summon Nurse, she normal summons Maid, she gets your changeover, and then your board state should have your Erratic Dragon and your Red Eyes on the board. So obviously you use your changeover with Red Eyes and one of your 2 Dragon Maids, and then the other Dragon Maid and your Erratic Dragon go into your Erratic Dragon Seal, and you should already have your Borlo Savage Dragon by synchroing him off with your Gay Durg and your Miss Valley Baby Rock. But if you decide, you know, if you have a pretty good hand and you have a couple of the tuners, then you could probably just opt out and just go to a typical Dragunity board instead with those multiple negates, and then just kind of fall back on the Dragon Maid part a little bit later. But I like having the Dragon Maids in there. I'll probably make another video with the actual Dragon Maid deck that I play. But I do like having Dragon Maids because they make your longevity so much better. You start off explosive with the Dragunity part, because that was the next thing I started having an issue with. Was getting from Plat 5 to Plat 4 I was starting to play some really good grindy decks where they would prevent me from playing my game and would remove my board, and after turn 5, I've exhausted everything on my extra deck and just couldn't go on. But with these Dragon Maids, these two, if you play them properly, they just keep recycling into each other. If you end up using your Omni Negate and then you have your Housemaid on the field, you just bounce her back with Changeover and then resummon Shu and then just kind of start it back over, along with having a couple of tidying as well. It's pretty helpful. Could even save one of your bigger monsters that you could try to go back into a little later on. And I do want to also talk about this monster. So there are going to be times when you still want to kind of make a board, but you have a lot more Dragon Maids in hand or on the field. So there's this weird situation. Like, let's say you have Koos, Nurse, and Chambermaid. It's a pretty odd thing to have, but if you manage to special summon the Nurse and she special summons Chambermaid, you can normal summon your Koos and then use his effect, make him a level 4, and use it with the Nurse to go into Dragunite Luing, which is still a tuner, and then you can re-special summon your Koos onto the board, but you're not really going to use them. Maybe to go into like a, Hermetic Seal if you can. But then you can use Knight to synchro with your Chambermaid to make yourself a 10, either a Celsion or a Reed, I don't know. And this will also give them additional 1,000 attack power, so it's pretty good. I actually found that works out pretty often, so it's like a good little niche just in case you end up on some weird boards, or if you happen to have your Dragon Maids and they're swapping into their level 8 counterpart. Where's the level 8 counterpart? Oops, I didn't add that. Oh, I have one. But yeah, you switch into your level 8 counterpart, then you can use any of the tuners, to go into the level 10s. It's sort of like as a backup option. So you're pretty flexible in that regard. But the overall deck is about the same, just a couple of extra added cards. It's pretty thick, but because the cards just pull so much energy, your chamber searches, your parlor searches and dumps, and you're going to be going through it so quickly that having a deck this big doesn't really hurt you all that much, and you can typically get into what you need to. And because I made this one a little bit more, you got your tidying and your Ice Dragon Prison, decided to slap Awakening the Dragon in there, just so if they see that I'm constantly playing, tidying, they're probably going to think, oh, he drew it to a third tidying, let me destroy that. And then, oops, it's Awakening the Dragon, and now I got Ice Dragon Falcon on board. So that's pretty much what I've been playing. I am preparing my Heretic deck for the XYZ thing, and I could touch on the Buster Blader deck as well, because it's basically just Dragunity with a Buster Blader at the end. Yeah, basically you do your whole combo, which I'm sure you guys seen several times, but it's like the same stepping off part. Instead of normal summoning a Dragunity monster, you instead just normal summon Buster Whelp, and he searches Buster Blader, and then you turn your Heretic Dragon and Red Eyes into Protector Whelp. He then sends your fusion card to the graveyard. You then use your fusion card from the graveyard to discard something. It'll typically be your Ravine if you had a really good hand. You pull it back, you set it face down, because your monsters are pretty much going to lock you out of your extra deck from anything that's not a dragon. But it's a quick play spell card, meaning that on your opponent's turn, because your board should have Overload, Buster Dragon, Protector Whelp, and then Buster Blader when you end, and then this face down. And the second they summon a monster, you can just fusion it away, or if you want to wait for a better key card, you can do that as well. But the second you get Buster Blader the Dragon Slayer on the board with Buster Dragon next to it, most decks can't play through it unless they're named Eldritch. Yeah. Eldritch and Sky Striker, which is why I don't play this deck all that often, because I come across them so much. This will absolutely cripple Drytron if you go first. Like, there's just nothing that they can do to outplay this, because they can special summon the monsters from their hand, but the second they hit the field, they all become dragons. They can't activate their effects, so they're all pretty much worthless at that point. So if they don't end up with any destructions, you just auto win against them. But that's the problem with running a best of one format. You don't know until after you either win or lose. But those are my decks. I would definitely suggest, if you're going to make any alterations, probably take a little bit more eye from here, and maybe cut down the lightning storms or dark ruler no more. I'd probably say this is worth cutting, because so many boards don't really end on that many monster negates besides Drytron. You could put it in Maxi if you want to. I hate drawing Maxi and then using it and either drawing another Maxi or just never getting another draw. It just feels like a waste. So I prefer to just have cards that always got me value, and if they don't give me value, I can at least discard them, knowing that they're good to get discarded, because I'm pretty much good to go from there. So try to make the deck as efficient as possible, and the main purpose of Tempest is actually just to search for a miss. So there's that. Alright, well, hopefully this goes through pretty well, and I'll also try to upload a video today, but no promises. But here you go, here's the deck profile.